My name is John Roberson, and just to prove that I can do it, my airplane was 4239487. I really wanted to be a pilot, so I enlisted in the Air Force, the Air Corps, in 1943, just as soon as I turned 17, and I was in that program, the Air Cadet program, for about a year. And then I could see that that was not going to go anywhere. They had too many pilots, and so I volunteered for gunnery school. And I think the Air Force, if I remember correctly, gave me some kind of an aptitude test and decided I was totally unqualified to be any kind of a mechanic, as I had no aptitude in that direction at all. So, of course, they sent me to mechanic school at Amarillo to work on B-29s. I got about halfway through that, and they decided that was enough of that, and so then I said, well, I'm going to gunnery school. And they sent me out to Las Vegas, and they didn't need any more gunners after a little while, and so then I went back to the East Coast and was at Greensboro, the overseas replacement depot, and then overseas. And I went over on a freighter called a Sea Scamp, and it was 600 men, they told me, to a hole. It looked like there was more than that. And the bunks, I think, were 6 or 8 feet deep, and lucky I was to have a top bunk. And after a while, all those guys were seasick and everything else. It really smelled terrible down in that hole. We had bad weather going over, and a lot of the times we were not allowed on deck. We landed at Le Havre, France, and then we went to Camp Herbert Territon for a few weeks. This was I think it was in January or December, and it was cold. It was really cold. We were in tents, and the food was not all that good, but we hadn't eaten on the Sea Scamp for about 2 days because the electric grills had burned up, and the last day that we got anything to eat was a cup of fruit cocktail. And then in their wisdom, they say, get up at midnight because you got to be packed and ready to go, and we got up and stood around in the halls of that companionways of that freighter for I don't know how many hours, and we finally got off about daylight, got in trucks and went to the camp. After spending some time there, I started to say, when we got to that camp, that's the first good meal we had, and it was some kind of bully beef or something, but boy, it tasted good. But after that, the food was terrible. Then they loaded us into boxcars with straw on the floor, and we traveled from Le Havre, France to Fürstenfeldbruck, which is down near Munich. And it seemed to me like it took about 4 or 5 days to get there because it would only go about 10 miles an hour. And then it would stop, and anybody that had to go to the bathroom would jump off and go. And if it started moving again before you were through, you just had to run like heck to catch up with that freight train. A few weeks in Fürstenfeldbruck, and we got sent to Rothwesten, which was an old German night fighter base. And while we were there, I got pneumonia, and pretty bad, and wound up in the hospital for about 8 weeks or so. And by the time I got out, we had moved to Fritzlar, and from Fritzlar, I went down to Schweinfurt. And while I was in Schweinfurt, I re-enlisted for a year because I wanted to see Europe. They said, you get 30 days of leave, you know. And I thought, boy, that's great. I got 5 days in 2 years that I was over there. Anyway, I wanted to say something about the people that I worked with over there, people that I really admired and thought a lot of. And one of the first was Morris Dalton, better known as Dirty Dalton, who passed away this past year. He was one of our pilots and a really terrific guy, one of the most popular guys there. Another was Barney Dobbs, who was the engineering officer that I worked for directly, and he was another great guy. He later was a prisoner of war, as most of you know, in a Korean affair for 3 years, and I believe he died this last year too. There are several others. George Aubel, who unfortunately is not here, he was another pilot over there. Then one of the fellows that flew my plane quite a bit was Jack Gamble, Red Jack Gamble. He was a captain, and I heard he went on to be a general. Very nice guy. A lot of enlisted men. I knew some of the fellows that are here over there. Hobson C. South, a lot of you know, the old boy from Alabama that played the guitar and several other musical instruments. I always credit him with saving my life when I got pneumonia, making me go on sick call. But I'm proud of my service the time I spent over there, and I'm glad to have known all of you and to have been part of this Night Fighter group. Thank you very much.